ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes, all right. Privileged to be here talking about California's emergency hemp regulations. Just want to start by saying I think on display this week has been leadership by the governor. The legislative process didn't move forward on getting us something that provided safety to Californians, especially our young people. As a pediatrician, father of four, somebody who's taken very seriously advancing the health of young people, what happened this week in California is really important. The governor, through his leadership, his push on his staff, brought together folks who don't always come together, not because we don't want to, but because we're not asked to. And this week we were asked to do it. And what you're going to hear about today, I think, is the culmination of that. People stepping up, saying we can do this quickly, put out regulations, get them through the process. I'll tell you a little bit more about what they are in a moment. And then we're going to take it to the next level and make sure enforcement is out there so that young people in particular are protected. So what are we here to talk about? Really four things before I turn it to the governor. That these regulations released by CDPH that go through a fairly short but rigorous tried and true process with the Office of Administrative Law. And the first thing it does is clearly state that hemp in food and beverage products must have undetectable levels of THC per serving. Yes, undetectable levels. Yes, labs that test these products can determine that they're undetectable. And that is per serving. What defines a serving? There's widely held standards to what a serving is, and those serving standards for every other food and beverage are going to hold here. Second thing, any sale of product cannot have more than 5 servings. We're not going to allow big quantities of something that per serving might be minimal, but large quantities could be toxic and problematic, especially for young people. Number 3, recognizing that earlier legislation in 2021 led us to just really look at 4 specific cannabinoids. CDPH, determining based on science, has added another 30 that go into that undetectable sense. So we are not just saying same old cannabinoids. We need to look more deeply and make sure that we're looking at everything that today we know can be toxic to Californians, in particular young people. And then lastly, that just like so many other products that we know can affect differently the growing mind and body, having an age standard. 21 and under, no dice. No way to sell these. You will be held accountable by the folks behind me if that is what happens. So again, before I turn it to the governor, grateful for your leadership this week in getting us here. Grateful for being focused on the health of young people, your 4 kids, my 4 kids, and millions of other Californians who I think deserve a chance to thrive in this state, and this is a small piece. Lastly, connect this to our behavioral health work. We know that there's a lot of things that trigger exposure and challenges with behavioral health. The more and more we dig into the science, we see the connection between THC use and some of the behavioral health conditions. This gives us more assurance that we are not inadvertently triggering something that a young person would have to face. And in the broad behavioral health agenda, Governor, that you have pushed forward, I count this as another small piece but important piece to guarantee that in the future. So thank you for a little bit of your time, and it over to you, Governor.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Galley. And as some of you may know, we just announced, and this was not intentional by any stretch of the imagination, but it's opportunistic. Dr. Galley, after 6 extraordinary years, has decided to focus a little bit more on himself and his kids than on 40 million Americans that happen to reside here in the state of California. And so we just announced a transition with Dr. Galley, and so it's my opportunity to celebrate and venerate what I think has been the most transformative leader in the health space in the United States of America in the last 6 years, and we have the receipts to back that up. There's simply no one that has impacted more people in more ways on more days in terms of advancing their public health, mental health, not just physical health, than Dr. Galley. And so I just want to thank you, I mean it, for the extraordinary work you did through the pandemic, extraordinary work you did during the pandemic to set the tone and tenor on some of the most transformative reforms as it relates to healthcare expansion, the only state in U.S. history that provides universal healthcare regardless of pre-existing conditions, ability to pay, and regardless of your immigration status. A state that has done more to reform its Medicaid system, Medi-Cal, than any state in the United States of America through the CalAIM transformation, the work that you've done on mental health across the spectrum as it relates to work 0 to 26, the landmark investments in that space, the transformative work in the Mental Health Services Act, the work that led to Proposition 1, the work we're doing on IST. I can go down a list of issues on parity, accountability, transparency, healthcare, cost frame, CalRx, doing not just our own insulin, announcements we're going to make in the January budget, which I cannot wait to preview. I don't know that I'll be able to wait 4 months. That will leak out somehow. But the excitement to move beyond just naloxone and the conversations we've had, despite some of the supply chain issues around insulin, into other areas under CalRx. But the Office of Healthcare Affordability, which is another just landmark achievement in setting price goals that simply does not exist in most, if not any other state in this country, all because of Dr. Galley. So just hats off, and I hope people really take time to reflect on what he's accomplished, not what he has promoted, but what he has actually achieved in the last few years. Look, on this issue, as a transition, I've been involved in this space for many, many years. As Lieutenant Governor, I set forth a framework where I thought we should responsibly begin to address the issue of reforms as it relates to the adult use of cannabis in the state of California. I worked with folks in law enforcement, children advocates, health advocates, over a course of a year, year and a half, on a very comprehensive and transparent process to put a white paper forward to advance a paradigm that ultimately led to an initiative to reform our marijuana laws in the state of California, our laws around cannabis. Led to an initiative that I helped draft, that I helped organize, aided by and informed by that white paper that we set forth. Ultimately led to an initiative, Proposition 64, that was overwhelmingly supported by the voters. One thing that was an anchor of consciousness in that effort was to protect our youth and to make sure that they weren't being exploited, to make sure that products were not being put on the shelf that were targeted to our kids, to make sure those products were safe and secure, and that this market was regulated for adult use. Over the course of the last number of years, we've seen efforts at the federal level, going back as early as 2018, as it relates to the hemp space in particular. We recognized here in California we needed to do more to regulate the hemp space after the adult use for cannabis was approved by the voters. I worked closely with member Aguilar Curry, who set forth under AB 45 the parameters that Dr. Galley just referenced, a bill that I was proud to sign in 2021 that in many ways mimicked aspects of that farm bill going back in Congress in 2028 in the hemp industry, but also added other parameters of regulation. None of us expected the kind of exploitation that we've experienced in the hemp industry since. What we're doing today as it relates to the emergency regulations is because of that exploitation, because of the greed of many folks in the industry, many represented right here in the products that you see, not just here today, but products you see proliferating all throughout the United States and on shelves in grocery stores all across the state of California. These products were just picked up yesterday by my staff, just down the block, not in a regulated environment, an environment that's available to our kids, available to anyone. These intoxicating products that are leading to more and more abuse by our children. You go to any grocery store, vast majority, and you'll see similar products. THC, 10 milligrams. You'll see gummies like this. And if you can immediately think, is that a Disney product? Your eyes didn't deceive you, intentionally trying to manipulate our children. Available everywhere. Gummies that are directly targeted to our kids. It's a disgrace and it's a shame. And the industry bears full responsibility for not policing itself, for the proliferation of these intoxicating products that are hurting our children. And we see that. You see that in the evidence and the data, in the emergency rooms, the number of emergency calls, the stress and anxiety many parents have. You see so many of these products specifically in and around in grocery stores near high schools, near middle schools, near elementary schools, is the case in my backyard. And so we're here to regulate this industry. We were hopeful that we were going to get that done. Again, Assemblywoman Aguilar-Curry had a bill to address the issues and address some of the complexities and nuances. We don't want to kill the hemp industry. We want the hemp industry to be regulated. It was intended not for intoxicating products. But they've advanced a loophole, and that's exactly what they're doing. They have exploited that loophole, and they are selling intoxicating products that hurt our kids. And so we've had enough. And so these emergency regulations will allow us to move forward, to clamp down on that. And the fancy folks you see to my left and the right, and the reference that Dr. Galley made about our enforcement component, we're bringing together our teams, the alcohol beverage control, we're bringing together our teams as it relates to the folks that do our tax collections, and our health folks. They're gonna get out there and they're gonna enforce this ban as we go through a very short administrative process. This emergency regulations begin a process at the OAL. That's a public process, very short, strained process, and then they officially are adopted and advanced. I'm hopeful that we can work with Assemblywoman Aguilar-Curry next year in the legislature to address some of the integration issues. We believe hemp, even hemp with intoxicating components, can be sold, but they must be sold in a regulated environment, not in grocery stores, not in corner stores all throughout the state of California. That integration can occur, from my humble perspective, but should occur through a legislative vehicle and process that we were hopeful, again, to have advanced this year, but unfortunately fell short. But we're committed to, in the spirit of partnership, in the next legislative session. But in the interim, enough. In the interim, we are looking to hold folks accountable. We want these products off the shelves. The state can't do everything. We are hopeful that parents start to pay a little more attention. Many have, I assure you, including this one, to the sparkling waters that sit there right next to your sparkling water bubblies that our kids are purchasing right after school. Kids are purchasing right after school without even knowing or realizing. I mean, I don't know how you know or realize this is a hemp product. It says tune-up, sparkling water. I mean, you can barely find that it's THC in it. It's a disgrace. And these gummy bears, sitting right there with all the other candies and everything else. So send a kid to an emergency room. It's a disgrace. So we want this regulated. We want these products off the shelf. We want the retailers, the grocers to get them off themselves today. They don't need to wait for these folks to show up. And we want parents that see something like this to walk right up to the cashier and say, what the hell do you have this on your shelves for? What are you promoting? You know, get this off the shelf. We're not coming back to the store. So forgive me, this, as I said, often is the case. I think for any of us that are parents, 4 kids, Dr. Galley references 4 kids, get a little intense about this because my kids, ironically, I think it was 11 or 12-year-old son has said, hey, Dad, I think that you should check out. We got some older friends of mine are saying they're buying some stuff they shouldn't be, and they were telling everybody. I said, what are you talking about? And then we'll go down to the grocery store that I get my coffee, and I look on the shelves and all these products are there, literally mixed in with their LaCroix and everything else. And that sort of led to sort of a renewed vigor on this. Not that I needed that personal expression of concern. That concern had, again, predated even the legislation, going back years and years and years in this space. Final point. As you know, the taxes that are collected under our adult use of cannabis, they go into 3 buckets. One is law enforcement. One comes with issues around land use, and one substantive bucket is around protecting our kids. So this has been the foundation of our efforts and the foundation that has crumbled because of the exploitation of the hemp industry and those that seek only profits and don't seek to protect our kids. And that's why we're here today, and I'm grateful for this health framework and approach and the enforcement that will come through this interagency task force that has loosely been formed of agencies that will work collaboratively together to stretch our resources and hold these bad actors to account. And I want to thank all of the retailers in advance for recognizing the seriousness, the purpose to which we place these regulations, and thank them in advance for doing the right thing, getting these products off the shelf without having to wait for a knock on the door by the Alcohol Beverage Control or our state agencies. With that, we're here to answer any questions.
I do have a question. We're talking about the stores carrying these products. What about the distributors? Would
Hold them
this
accountable as
interagency
well.
task force?
These are illegal products, and we're going to hold them accountable, not just the retailers accountable for selling illegal products. These products should not be sold in the state of California once these rules and regulations are put into effect. We're happy to work with those product manufacturers, distributors, and others, representatives, to appropriately address their desire to sell products for adults in a regulated environment. That would need to be done through an integrative strategy that can be done through a legislative solution.
Governor, I have a question about some bill action you took right before this event. It looks like you vetoed AB 1840, which would provide or would allow the state's undocumented people to apply for the first-time home buyers program. In your veto note, you noted that lawmakers were essentially trying to expand eligibility to a program that didn't have any money. But I wonder if your decision would have been different had there been money in there.
Well, that's a hypothetical. The bill that was sent to me was a program that had no money, and it was expanding eligibility to a bill to a program that had no money. It seemed rather curious to me. So felt it was unnecessary, completely consistent with prior vetoes along the similar lines, and a bill that just landed on my desk yesterday. I went through 150 bills. They're all starting to get pressed, and I've got 991 total that I'll be reviewing. Many are not yet on my desk. Looking forward to getting to those, and obviously the veto speaks for itself, and I think you correctly reported it.
Well-
Governor, you've repeatedly warned Democrats not to give fodder to Republicans with bills that virtue signal. Was your veto today an example of that?
What was the first part of the question?
You've warned Democrats not to give fodder to Republicans with bills that virtue
I'm
signal.
not familiar with that. Give an example.
Sorry, not to provide, with the example of the taxing the ultra wealthy, for example.
Well, that was just, that's not giving fodder, that's just common sense.
Are you concerned that bill would have given fodder to Republicans? There was some outrage over it when it was introduced.
No, I look at the bills on the merits, but I think you're implying something that's not present or at least representative of this veto, or the veto as it relates. It wasn't even veto. This notion of a state wealth tax, I think, would have terrible impacts on the state of California. A state alone doing that would, I think, be a terrible mistake. That'd even get out of committee. But no, this on its merits is very consistent with vetoes I've done in the past.
Well, what did you know of-
Demonstrators.
Hold on. While we're on this subject of bills, I just want to know, what did you know about the bills not being brought to the floor? The two critical reparation bills, Senate Bill 1403 and Senate Bill
Forgive me,
1331.
because there's over 1,000. I'm not very good at the numeric, but
Okay, well, we're talking about the Freeman Agency,
yeah, I know a
specific
little
one
bit
by.
about that. What I do know.
Well, you
is-
you had added some amendments to that reached to Senator Bradford's desk
Yeah.
on August 26th. That
As it
came from
relates-
your office.
Well, hold on. We work with the legislature throughout the legislative process on amendments. Sometimes they advance those amendments, sometimes they don't take our amendments, and those bills are sent to my desk. I think you're referencing bills that were not sent to my desk that did not pass through the legislature. As it relates to the broader issue of reparations, which I appreciate both of you referencing, we work very closely with the Black Caucus on a package of reparations reforms. We met before the legislative session, we met during the legislative session. We worked very collaboratively on amendments. We also worked on bills without amendments. And I think the vast majority of those that we agreed to and worked collaboratively together with the Black Caucus have ended up on my desk. I'll be reviewing them all on the merits And I want to applaud the head of the Black Caucus, Lori Wilson, who's been spectacular in advancing those bills, their principles, and advancing them in a collaborative spirit.
Well, they seem to be pretty much under fire about those two critical bills that did not make it to your desk.
Well, those bills, you'll have to ask them, the legislature, why those didn't land on my desk.
Governor, did you tell the Black Caucus that you would veto the reparations agency and reparations fund bills?
I didn't talk directly to anyone about those two bills. As it relates to the process of how bills are done broadly in the state, there's a collaborative process. People ask our opinions. Are there concerns? Issues that have dollar figures are consistently marked, consistently. If it wasn't done in the budget, that's going to be a challenge. There's always exceptions to that, but that's going to be a challenge. And that was a process that unfolded over the course, as I said, of months, particularly as it relates to the reparations package, in partnership with the Black Caucus. And there was no daylight with Lori Wilson and the Black Caucus as it relates to the work that we did collaboratively together. And let me just, on a personal note, and forgive me about this, she did not deserve to be attacked like she was attacked. Members of the Black Caucus did not deserve to be attacked and their integrity impugned. That was disgraceful. There were members of that Black Caucus that are owed an apology for being treated the way they were treated, to be doxxed, to be personally maligned and attacked. So forgive me for expressing that. Great respect and admiration for the leadership of the Black Caucus and members of the Black Caucus.
Just
I have a
broadly.
question. I have a question about a bill on your desk that would ban cell phones in schools.
Yes, as you know, I'm a strong advocate, though I have not read the details
I do,
of
I
any
do.
final amendments. If you have, maybe you can offer your advice and
Well,
counsel, but I
this-
haven't reviewed those
This
details.
might get us there. I'm wondering if, given the latest school shooting, if there's like a new reconsideration. I know school
No.
shootings are not new, but there are parents who are saying they see these text messages from kids who think they're saying goodbye in a text.
Yeah. No, I think that's weighted in the consideration. And the consideration being this. My understanding of the bill, at least my hope and expectation as it relates to the work we've done together, is there's a process that's going to unfold, and there'll be all kinds of considerations. I'd hate to see another school shooting be the reason that we bring TVs into the classroom and that disrupt our children's education. Because in essence, that's what a cell phone is equivalent to, bringing a TV into the classroom and disrupting the ability to get quality academic time. As it relates to the issues of security, I don't know that that should be on the basis of an individual student's role and responsibility. I think that should be more broadly the schools and the school districts. As it relates to the issue of school shootings, I would hope that we would have leaders that would not assign them as fate and claim, well, there's just a fact of life, whether we like it or not, just a fact of life, and roll over. The statements from the former President of the United States, Donald Trump, and Senator Vance were disappointing and unsurprising. They've done nothing to advance the cause of safety in our schools, nothing whatsoever. They've done nothing to address the issue of gun violence in this country. They will do nothing, God forbid, if they're in the White House. Number one killer of our children is guns, and they will do nothing to address the number one killer of our children. But the issue of cell phones, I think, is much broader and richer and deeper. And there's a process, as you know, with the implementation date, my understanding of that bill, that will give us time to process and to address concerns that many would have around the how. And it's much broader than that one concern about access to the phone in case of emergency, a lot of other issues around securing the item, around exemptions as it relates to those that would be banned that may have unique health or medical needs or have particular concerns that may be expressed by parents that would address their health and safety on an individual basis. All of that will be part of that process.
I have a question about the special session and just McGuire and Rivas and this dynamic between the two. I know you're out of it, it's not your bag, but just, I know McGuire basically told the LA Times that he won't come back until the assembly has the votes for your proposal. He has repeatedly stated that he knows how to whip votes, and then, Rivas said he needed more time. There's obvious clear friction between these two. Do you find it unproductive for what you're trying to accomplish, and any other thoughts on what's playing out in the
What's
legislature?
unproductive is that for years and years, we've been fleeced you've been fleeced. Every single person watching, every single one of you goes to the gas station by the oil company. What's unproductive is they continue to spew their lies, and they continue to obfuscate and work against common sense solutions to protect consumers. What's unproductive is that you've got legislative leaders introducing bills to eliminate $7 billion of investment in roads and bridges and repairs in this state. And so I'm very grateful to both leaders, the Assembly and the Senate, for their commitment to get something done, to rein in the greed of these oil companies. I'm grateful that that process has begun. I'm grateful that there's earnestness in that process. I'm grateful that they have authors, committees set up, and I'm grateful that the President of the Senate, Pro Tem, made those statements of his support and commitment once the Assembly process is advanced.
Governor,
question.
I know that on the topic of the special session, important as this issue may be, this is not the last or the first time you all have dealt with this kind of last-minute push. I mean, what do you say to lawmakers who feel that you've worn out your relationship with the legislature in these last-minute pushes?
What's the last minute push?
This last-minute push towards the end of session, there was also the issue with the trying to get the alternative ballot measure to Prop
Last minute
36.
push, this was I think this has been discussed since 2000.
There are lawmakers who feel they didn't have enough time.
And in January, the issue is a familiar issue. In fact, not only a familiar issue, you may recall, a particular Assembly member during the special session on price gouging said we should move quickly to incorporate the components of what this special session includes. And we felt we needed to get the information first to quantify the scope of the consideration. In January, the CEC, the new head of our put out more details. We worked very closely with the Speaker and the Pro Tem over the course of many, many months on this proposal. As you know, the Pro Tem was very confident he had the votes. There were some concerns around timing as it relates to a myriad of other issues. I think perhaps in the space you were implying, but that's above my pay grade, and that's for them to discuss, because but I say with love and respect,
But they held it up,
I
right?
don't focus on that as much as you do. That said, for whatever reason, they felt that they needed a little extra time. And we're providing that time. We did so at the last day of the end of the session to extend that, to address the concerns that I hope you have as an individual, taking your reporter hat off, and all of you have, as it relates to being gouged at the pump, which happens every single September. $2.61 above the national average on October 4th, 2022. $2.25 above the national average on September 30th, 2023, and today $1.37 above the national average and moving up. We have seen on the wholesale market in the Bay Area, prices in the spot market about 70 cents higher than they were a little over a week or 10 days ago. I assure you, you're going to see that reflected in the cost at the pump. Watch this space. Meanwhile, the national prices at the pump are declining. There's been no new taxes imposed, no new fees, no new regulations in the state of California. They're manipulating because of wholesale price constraints as it relates to wholesale supplies, as it relates to refinery issues. We see this every single September. It's going to impact Nevada, and it's going to impact Arizona. So I think it's well past time that we address this issue.
But what I
Why
was
did
trying
I-
to get at was that,
Why did
Right
it
behind
take-
you guys, someone's having
Thank you.
a
We received countless calls about the rising cost of PG&E. Do you guys have any plans, you and your office, to address that issue anytime
Well,
soon?
we're working with the legislature on a package of reforms as it relates to utility costs. We have very specific ideas. PUC is working on a number of ideas as well. And best I could say at this stage, to be respectful of the process and getting involved in these process questions and the consequence of not being respectful of the process, it's a preview of things to come in the very short, in the next few weeks. We're working in real time.
This
Thank you,
proposal
everyone.
on the special session, I'm sorry, came up in your administration in January. Why did it take until the end of August to get a bill?
Well, it's a process. You gotta have a lot of players. It's, I'm the 3 branches of government. Process unfolds over the course of time. And, but here's the great thing. We get this done this year, we don't have to experience this next year. We don't get it done this year, we'll experience it for a full additional year. We just had a special session. The state of California is for the first time ever actually addressing the issue of why. Why are gas prices so much higher here than other parts of the country? And we've been lied to by the oil companies and everyone they buy off around here for years and years. You've been lied to. We don't think it anymore, we now know it because we had the courage of our convictions to do a special session a year ago. And you guys were all running around on that one, talking about, oh, who's up, who's down, who's upset, and who's not upset. And with all due respect, that's just not interesting to me. That's interesting perhaps to some folks, but what matters, I think, to folks at the end of the day is, did you accomplish something that makes a difference in my life? I'm working hard, I'm barely getting by, I'm sick and tired of being screwed. You know, and we did something meaningful, and what we were able to do is get information that we never could get before. We asserted a paradigm, and now we're proving it. Turns out there's something that goes on with refineries. There's something that goes on in the spot markets. There's something that goes on with price spiking. And it's really price profiteering, because at the end of the day, they're raking in billions and billions of dollars. We don't think this now, we know it. And so over the course of the last many months, we put together a framework with a new team we just put up, had to hire folks, brought them in, independent group into the CEC, and they come up with this proposal on the basis of information. They stress test that information. There's a lot of litigation in that space. These guys aren't going down easy. They've been enjoying the fruits of this for years and years and years. And so we put a legislative proposal. People wanted to have confidence in that legislative proposal. We moved it forward. We were moving with hundreds of other bills, priorities for a lot of folks. And so we just extended the timeline a little bit in a special session to solve for you, for your families, for those that are out there that demand more of us because they want to understand the why. And we now have exposed it. And what they're going to do is they're going to spend, as they did, tens of millions of dollars to manipulate those facts, that truth. And we are committed to a process that has an outcome, which is really the goal here, to protect consumers and to address these abuses and this price gouging. And so I'm really proud of the legislature for what they did and what they're currently doing. And the rest will be history. But I hope the history of this moment is around our resolve and our testament to stand tall on behalf of working folks in the state and the middle class that are being taken advantage of by these oil companies. With that, okay, thank you all very much, and no, we're not handing these out.
So can we not hear from Dr. Galley? I know we just saw
Oh, yeah,
the
you
news
should.
of
Well,
him.
that's good. Thank
yeah.
you for that. I'm grateful to you.
Just,
Doctor, you gotta get
yeah,
up here.
we'd really like to,
Yeah.
if you can, please.
Yeah. Answer the question about
What are your
process.
thoughts on the special session?
Do you really want me?
No, yeah, I know.
Because I'll get in the middle of whatever you want me
You're
to.
leaving. You can say
You're
whatever you
good.
want.
Wow, well, really a privilege of a professional career to get to work for this governor, this team, on behalf of 40 million Californians. We went through a lot. I think we achieved a lot, and I'm just really proud of all the things we've had a chance to touch, and hopefully moving forward, it's just a reminder that California really does lead. I appreciated the governor's statements, but it isn't hyperbole. When we go to DC and we share our ideas, people listen because they know it's based on experiences, they know that it could impact millions of Americans, and it could be the leading edge of the next thing that is going to transform the experience of being an American, not just a Californian. So I hope I haven't taken that responsibility lightly, that I've come to it with a degree of integrity, and I've just appreciated the opportunity.
What's next for you, Dr. Galley?
Ooh, feeding tennis
Question
balls to
we've been
my
trying to ask.
daughter, throwing bullpens to my son, kicking soccer balls to the youngest one, and haranguing a couple of them to do their homework. But yeah, that's what
And
I'm
we're
gonna
gonna try to
enjoy.
coerce them for a few special projects. And
Oh, no.
that's exciting announcement as well.
And I will just
Stay tuned.
say.
We got a lot of good stuff for you guys.
Exactly. You know, leaving state service by no means means leaving service of the state, and so I really do hope I'll continue to have opportunities to show up in lots of places and push, I think, a very ambitious set of goals that lifts up as many vulnerable Californians as possible. And I think this administration, just looking here, Anne, Dave, you know, so many important people behind me across this state do work every single day to make a difference, and it shows up in the ideas of this governor, how he talks about them, how he pushes us to be just a little better than we were yesterday. And I think if we keep doing that, suddenly things start to transform, and it's been a lot of fun to be part of it. So thank you for asking me to come up.
Thank you. All right.
All right, thank you, Governor.
guys.
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah.